This is Headspace.
Welcome, everybody, to Headspace by My Mama Done Told Me. This is a segment of our podcast where we have the pleasure to sit down with the experienced or experts in various fields, people with unique experiences of the world around us, and discussing what it takes to do what they do, why they do it, what's helped them along the way. And hopefully we get some good conversation out of this. My name, of course, if you've listened to any of the other episodes, is Jeff.
Yeah, my name's Jeff.
My name is Jeff. And I'm here with Sister Lauren. Hi, Lauren.
What's up?
How's it going? Good. Hi, Trixie.
Hey.
That's how Trixie sounds. So we are here to talk to somebody who I met through the world of podcasting. He has done an episode of our other podcast called Documentary, and I was honored enough to be on an episode of his podcast, Disability After Dark, Popcorn and Power Chairs. He's an acclaimed disability awareness consultant. His honest and open perspective about his life with disability has resonated with audiences. He's got a good little following there, and for his podcast, Disability After Dark. I know I've said this on another podcast, but after we talked to him, I had messages rolling in going, "You talked to the Andrew Gurza?" I'm like, I mean, yeah, and he's cool.
Wow. Makes me feel weird.
Yeah, no. It shouldn't make you feel weird. It should make you feel good, man.
It does. It's weird.
Okay,
it's weird.
And good is weird. He's a really good person who I consider a friend. He is Andrew Gurza.
Yay.
Welcome, Andrew Gurza.
Hello. Thank you for having me on this little segment of your show. Thank you for having me back to one of the many things you do.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. Lauren and I were talking about who we're gonna do this show with, like what experts, what different outlooks, what experiences that we want to have represented here, and your name came up pretty much immediately. So,
oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to see you and talk to you again. I should also note, Andrew is, which I want to talk about this. You have a book coming out.
Yeah, released I'm not sure when this will air, but I just released the book jacket on the internet yesterday.
Yeah, so the book is called Notes from a Queer Cripple, How to Cultivate Queer Disabled Joy and Be Hot While Doing It. So if anyone's going to know about that, it's going to be Andrew. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little about your book. Go ahead and plug that thing right up top.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about it. I started writing it I was commissioned to write it, or hired to write it in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got cold feet for like a good 6 months to a year and didn't write anything. Every time I went to write, I was like, this is terrifying. I can't do this. What the F?
Yeah.
No way. And then I was in the hospital for a little bit. And then when I finally recovered from that, I was like, okay, I think I can sit down and write this. So they graciously gave me more time, and I powered through. And so they basically were like, we want you to write a book based on your experience being a sexual disabled person and what that's like and what it's like to be queer and disabled. And we want you to write to that community, queer disabled people, talking about your experience and kind of give them a guidebook. And at first I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I am definitely not the right person for this. But then they were like, just write from your heart, write your stories down, and hopefully they'll resonate. And they pretty much ate up everything that I wrote. There was not a lot of, I was surprised. There was not a lot of editing. There was not a lot of like heavy lifting that had to be done because my editor was really, I checked in with him every time I wrote a chapter. I was like, here's what it is. What do you think? What would you like to see here? And he would say, this is great. Go to town. Go keep writing. And I kept waiting for them.
You got lucky there, I think, because I think a lot of times editors and publishers or whatever make it really hard on the author to actually write their book. So
I mean, I was expecting like I'm not pushback, but like creative discussions and all that. And they were like, no, we love what you're doing. Keep going. There was
Awesome.
It's
never,
amazing.
there was never really any like, oh, this doesn't fit. Try again. There was like, here's some ideas to make it stronger. Try this. Or if I was nervous, I would email him and say, I'm nervous. How do I do this chapter? And he would say, try this. What do you think about this? Try this.
Very
And
cool.
so it took me about a year and a few months to write it properly. But now that it's slated to be out in April, so like 4 months from now, which is terrifying.
Wow.
I'm terrified. I'm like so excited, but also like scared to have this, like to see the cover with my name on it. Is like, oh my god, that I wrote that. What? That's fine.
Yeah.
So
That's
very excited, but
exciting.
also
That's so cool.
How's it gonna be distributed?
Through the publisher is gonna do some work, gonna get some influencers together, and they're gonna distribute it through Amazon. The pre-order is already available there, so if you wanted to pre-order, you can literally just type in the name of the book or my name, and it'll show up on Amazon. It'll be ready to be sent to you by the delivery date, which is the end of April. So it's already like prepped to go. They're gonna put me in touch with contacts they have, try to get my name out there, to try to get reviews done.
Yeah.
But it's really a lot of, because it's a small publishing house, it's a lot of me pushing it and then word of mouth and hoping that it gets to the right people. And like anyone who writes a book knows that most books, especially from first-time authors, you don't go in there hoping to make a ton of money.
Right.
And that's never been my plan. My plan has been to use the book as a tool to further my speaking gigs, my podcast, already what I'm doing, to further that stuff and to get me more business in the work that I'm already doing.
Absolutely.
So,
well, good luck, man. We will definitely be purchasing a copy of that. So
for sure.
Thank you so much. I highly appreciate that.
Absolutely. So the purpose of this segment of our show is to explore the minds of people with unique experiences. So I think it's important that our listeners, I know you alluded to some of it just about, by discussing what your book is about, but for our listeners who may not know who you are, could you give us, tell the world why you have a unique perspective on the world around us?
Yeah, my name is Andrew Gurza. I'm a severely disabled person, which means, for me, it means that I require help with pretty much all parts of my day that you might take for granted. So I'm a full-time power wheelchair user. I live with spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy, which means I can't walk.
It's the best palsy, I heard.
Yeah, you're right. It is it's the best of the palsies. And so I need help with pretty much every aspect of my day. I live with IBS, anxiety, and depression also, so that's a fun bag of stuff I get to deal with. I'm also super duper queer. And so that's part of why the book is in the world, and that's a lot of the work I do is dispelling myths around sexuality and disability, because those two intersections don't get talked about enough.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, did anything specifically inspire you to start talking so openly about these conversations around sexuality? A lot of the work that you do is, hey, let's talk about things that might not make you super comfortable, both in just talking about disability, but specifically in talking about being queer and disabled. Is there something that specifically inspired you to do that, or is it just because that's what you're dealing with? So let's talk about it.
I wanted community, and I wanted queer men specifically to notice me. And I was like, well, I'm not meeting guys the regular way. What if I talked about it? What if I sexualized myself in a positive way, so that they could see me? And so I remember one of the first things they ever did in this work was I hired a photographer. I emailed a queer magazine in Toronto called Fab Magazine. They're defunct now, and they're like a queer penny magazine that you get at the newsstand. And so I emailed their editor and said, they had like a sexy guy of the month thing. And I said, oh, this is great. Have you ever had a sexy guy of the month who was in a wheelchair? And they said, oh no, we never have. And I was like, great, I'm here. Would you do this with me? And so within a couple of hours of me sending that email, they were like, we can send a photographer over to you today. Would you be willing to take some photos? I was like,
Wow.
okay, sure. And so I remember sitting in my apartment, having no plan for this, having the photographer be like, okay, just take off your shirt and we'll photograph you. So I did a bunch of like self-directed poses that he asked me to do. And that's kind of how my journey started. And then I realized that if I took that photo and I showed it all over Toronto and put it all online and said, okay, this is what I want to talk about. And I started emailing HuffPo and I started emailing like big companies that I could write for, saying, I don't want any money. I just want to write some articles about sex and disability. Can I write for you? And they were like, sure, free content? Great, no
Right.
problem. And so
I'm
Yeah.
not going to turn that down.
yeah. And so I kind of got my feet wet there. And then probably about a year or so of me doing that, there was a call out in Toronto for every year they did a Love Your Body. Like every New Year they did a Love Your Body magazine for one of the big magazines in Toronto. And I noticed they never had a visibly disabled person. And so the person does a photo where they're naked in a studio. They're posed naked in the studio. And I said, well, I don't see anybody in a wheelchair in your photos. Can I apply? So I applied. They took me. And so that photo went viral in and around Toronto. And it went on one of the news stations here. And they said, they interviewed me and said, why did you do this? And I said, oh, I think I'm deliciously disabled. And I kind of made it a joke and didn't think anything of it. And then I realized that I could turn that into a hashtag. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, let me play with that. So I played with that for a little bit. And I realized very quickly that through using all this branding, I could build a name for myself. And by talking about this stuff, I could build a name for myself. And so it turned from I want to be noticed into I want to turn this into a job. And I just started emailing and cold calling places and saying, I want to talk about this. So I'd email universities and say, can I do a talk for your gender studies class? Can I do a talk for your pride event? Can I do the, and really just putting myself way out of my comfort zone to find opportunity and just say, well, you've never had somebody like me on your stage before. Can I talk to you?
You through previous conversations we've had have alluded to that society has a hard time wanting to talk about sex and disability in the same conversation, especially when it comes to sex and disability and queerness, not cis het, and
I love watching non-queer people gently try to figure out how to say
queerness. I was more
it's
concerned
right, you're
about
correct. I just
about
enjoy
whether
watching,
that's a word. Yeah.
No, it is. I just enjoy watching you like try to gently
watching me struggle.
that.
Yeah. Let me try really hard not to say this the wrong way. It sounds like you didn't hit a whole lot, unless you're just leaving that part out, hit a whole lot of struggle getting people who you reached out to wanting to accept what you bring to the table. Is that the case? Or
I mean, I was definitely rejected. I was told no a bunch of times. I was told like you don't fit what we want, but I just persevered, and I was very provocative. So one of the first things I wrote for HuffPost probably 10 years ago now, more than that, 10, 12 years ago now, was I wrote an article for them called Why Disabled Sex is the Best Sex You'll Ever Have, or something like that, or 5 reasons why like sleeping with somebody like me is the best sex you'll ever have. And I made sure to really ramp up the provocativeness so that it would get noticed.
Yeah.
And people did not like some of the stuff I wrote. I was very blunt about why you should fuck a disabled person and why they have value and why they should be porn stars and all the stuff that I was putting out there in the world. And people didn't like it and people said no. And I remember I would use the word cripple in my work and people would, oh my God, they would riot. They'd be like, well, how dare he use this language? But I knew that I was making waves and I was getting people to pay attention to what I was doing.
Right.
And so when even with the book, the reason why it's called Notes from a Queer Cripple, and I was very strongly adamant, and they didn't push back. They were very lovely. But I said, I want to call it Notes from a Queer Cripple because Queer Cripple, when you read those two words together, you immediately pay attention to what comes next.
Mm.
You immediately are like, why is there a book called this? I should pay attention to this.
Right.
And you're ready to rage because you were not supposed to use those words separately or together to describe a queer person or a disabled person. And for me, it was like, this is a term of empowerment. I'm going to play with that. And so I started using all this I started being really provocative because I wanted people to pay attention. But what I was really trying to do was be like, I'm here too. I deserve to be a part of this conversation.
Right. Yeah, and I get to call myself what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to speak a little bit, so you're dealing with certain levels of marginalization, both from being disabled and from being queer. So first of all, I guess you describe yourself as severely disabled.
Yes.
Just tell our listeners what that means to you.
Yeah, so I think I alluded to it a second ago, but I'll do it again.
Okay,
More
sorry.
succinctly. Being severely disabled means that I need help with everything. It means that I can't stand up, I can't walk, I can't dress, I can't, shower, I can't do all the things we take for granted. Also, it means my disability is not going to get magically better. Like I'm not going to become not disabled tomorrow. Like it's gonna continue to not deteriorate, but it's gonna continue to stabilize the way it is or get worse. And severely disabled was a nice kind of way of me also dealing with the changes of my disabled body. And when I lose a function or when I'm unable to do something, it's a nice way for me to confront all of that and have a term that is for me, like when we think of disability, what do we think of? And no shade to this group of people,
Sure.
but the media will show spinal cord injury as the way we look at disability. And that's fine. But typically they'll show a person with spinal cord injury going to the Paralympics and doing all this stuff, and that's great. But that person is not in the same category as me.
Right.
And so I felt it was necessary to distinguish myself as somebody who needs a whole ton of help and who is not necessarily independent, whatever that means.
Right.
And so for me, it's a way of taking back my power away from people who think that needing help and needing care and needing support like I do is a bad thing. And so it was a nice way for me to understand my reality with a different terminology.
And I can understand, I think, the need to, or the desire to differentiate, not to take any struggle away from anyone else or whatever that may be, but also say that it's there is different severities to this. And where one level of disability or one severity of disability may have some accommodations, there's still a long way to go because there is such a spectrum of disability, and the amounts, just having a push button so that the door will come open might not be enough.
Yeah,
and
they're typically not enough for me to go somewhere
right.
and feel safe. I typically need another person with me for me to like go to a concert or go to a bookstore or go to a talk I'll do when the book comes out. Please go buy it. When all that stuff happens, I'll need somebody with me. And so we tend to think of accessibility as like, oh, I'll put an elevator in, I'll put a button in, I've done my job.
Yep.
And it's so much more than that. And I think having those gradations of severity, those like categories of like, are you moderately disabled? Are you a little bit disabled? Or are you like very, very disabled like me? I think it speaks to what we think of standard accessibility, especially in the US. Like, it's not enough. We haven't done enough. And I think that saying severely disabled makes people upset because they're like, oh, don't call yourself that. Don't say that. And it's like, no, but it's true.
Right.
Like, let's be honest about it. And I think my honesty, like that, calling myself severely disabled has cost me friendships with other disabled people that I thought were okay with me using that term. And I had people say, oh, you shouldn't call yourself that. And I don't like it. So I'm not going to talk to anymore. And it's like, okay, like,
Can-
all right, wow.
Can you help me understand why that would potentially offend somebody?
That's what I thought, because apparently he didn't think that I was severely disabled enough to be considered severely disabled. So I eventually just had to be like, okay,
Yeah.
so sorry you want to put that on me. But
Right.
like, it just goes to show when people with disabilities talk about their experience, somebody's not going to like it, no matter who it is. Someone's going
Yeah.
to push back.
How does, if we can get into maybe a little bit more feelings and some emotions here, what a lot, like you mentioned, a lot of worth in our society kind of circles around how independent a person can be. You know, even as a child, as they grow up, the true, you know, the true American or Canadian or societal thing is to say, you know, well, when you're off on your own and being independent, you know, and that's when you become an adult or something like that. I just wonder if you could maybe talk about how that affects you, because clearly you are an adult, you are a human being, but you're not independent. So
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself independent. I need a lot of help with everything. I would say, I think the way society has kind of weaponized independence against disabled people, and it's almost, they've made it almost to be, and they don't mean to do this intentionally. This is just from centuries and decades of people saying like, oh, you have to be independent, you have to get your independence back. Like, it stems from the idea the only way you can become disabled is if you have an accident, a tragic, horrible accident that takes away some of your humanity. And so I push back against that and just say I'm not independent. The idea that you would expect me to independently do these things is like, if I were to independently brush my teeth, I could do it. It would take me 45 minutes and I would be exhausted by the time I was done. If I was to independently put on a shirt, I could do it. It would take me an hour and I would be exhausted by the time I was done. So I can be independent. Technically, yes, I can do all those things, but it would exhaust my body. And so I would much rather be dependent on someone else. And so that's why I like, instead of saying independence or dependence, I like interdependence. I think interdependence is the way to go.
Okay.
Every single person on the planet is reliant on someone else. All of us are. Whether we think so or not, we all need someone else. So we should be working together to have our needs met.
Right.
For me, that just means I have more needs, so I need help with all the things that you might not think about. But when you're older, or if you have an accident, you might need help with that. Or if you have surgery, like, you might need someone to help you to and from the bathroom. I need that every day. You might need someone to help to dress you. I need that every day. And so I like to push back against this push for independence for myself. I think if another disabled person wants to do that, that's
Sure.
their journey and that's fine. But I think for me, like, saying I'm not independent is kind of freeing, because it shows that, like, I do need help and that's okay.
Well, there's even just as we are talking about this, I even feel like there's a little bit of a pit in my stomach when I think about saying the words "I'm not independent," and that's like it's such an ingrained piece of the culture that we live in, of how important that is, and it's hard. Even though I agree with what you're saying, I'm seeing it in myself. I'm seeing that grip that stigma has on me, and you know, so it's really enlightening and really, you know, cool to hear you talk about that, because it does put a whole new perspective on how important independence is and isn't. You know, is there a difference though when you talk about the independence of, like, mentally or emotionally? Like, is that a thing? I'm just trying to kind of.
I mean, I would think it is, and
Yeah.
I would think with my level of disability, I have the privilege to be able to think for myself and to verbalize and to communicate without assistance. So yeah, I guess you could say I'm independent in that way. And I would also say I'm very privileged in that way.
Sure.
There are folks with disabilities who can't speak for themselves, who will never know what they're thinking or wanting to verbalize because they can't.
But to even argue against or to even answer my own question, that independence, whether it's communicative, whether it's any kind of intellectual independence, it does that should not and does not equate to your worth as a human being, right?
It shouldn't. I mean, unfortunately, we do that a lot. People say, "Oh, Andrew's so smart. He's so brilliant. He's so great." And and I appreciate those sentiments. People say that to me all the time. And I think if I wasn't technically smart, or I didn't meet this arbitrary standard you've designed for me, would you like me less? Would you care about me less? Would I be less important? And I think one of the things that I think about as somebody with intellectual privilege is like, what can I do to ensure people with intellectual disabilities are also talked about and also thought about in certain spaces? Because because of my disability, I don't think about them enough, and that's something that I have to work on too. It's like reminding myself that I have a lot of stuff against me, but there are folks who don't have the privileges that I do, and they need to be given a space too.
As a disabled person, and having the platform that you have and doing some of the work that you've done, or even if you weren't, just being a disabled person, you are often kind of framed as being so strong or so inspirational, and just for existing, or maybe not just you, but you and other disabled and severely disabled people, are I've even referred to you on this podcast as being inspirational. Now, hopefully it didn't detract from anything that you're trying to do, because you have been inspirational to me, but I just wonder how does that make you feel?
I mean,
welcome to therapy with Jeff.
Oh God.
I'd be like, Jeff, don't.
Nobody needs that.
No.
I'd be like, Jeff, don't call me. No, I'm kidding. I think I could sit up here and say nobody should call me your inspiration, blah 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 blah. But I think I try to listen to. Like, I heard you call me inspirational on the show, and thank you, and I appreciated that.
Sure.
And I listened to the way you said it, and I listened to the wording you used, and I listened to the tone of your voice to be like, is he trying to be condescending? Is he trying to hurt me? Is he trying to? Is he hurting me unintentionally? And on all counts, I was like, no, he's just telling his experience. And I think when we think of inspirational, we have to think, if we're a non-disabled person thinking, oh, Andrew is so inspirational, my next question would be, thank you. Why? And then I would be so curious to hear your answer, or the person's answer. Like, why? Are you inspired because I took a breath today?
Right.
And then you feel...
Then we're like, all inspiring. All of us who are breathing, right? Yeah.
Or if he can do it, so can I. Like, that kind of stuff is, I think, damaging. But I think for me to let some of that anger go around being too inspirational, I listen to what are they trying to really say, and they're trying to say, Andrew, or someone like it, or somebody with a disability that I know, touched something in me, and I don't have the experience or language to say it fully, so I'm just going to say inspired.
Right. And I think that's very accurate. And we are limited by the language and the terminology that we know, and that we, and the experience that we have. So I think you're right on and I think we all could learn, whether it's that specifically or not, we all could learn a thing or two about, let's try to think a little bit more about what the person is trying to say, as opposed to
Yeah.
what they're actually saying. I can understand this, that, or the other, whether it's your situation or mine or who knows what. And you're going, oh, but you called me, that. You referred to me as this. Like, well, hopefully, through context and through conversation that that's not how I intended that. So
Of course.
can we give each other the benefit of the doubt a little bit more?
And I mean, how are we
in
gonna
life.
build a bridge between disabled and non-disabled folks? Or I was gonna go off on a big tangent there, but I'll just say disabled and non-disabled folks.
Mhm.
How are we gonna build a bridge between those communities if we are constantly fighting with each other over the right kind of language, over the right kind of verbiage? And yeah, it's fun to go on the internet and scream about when somebody does an ableist thing, and like, yeah, that gets you lots of likes and that's cool, but like, is it actually doing anything to further people's understanding? No, it's just creating a division between me and you, and that's I think we have to be very cognizant of when I see disabled people who are angry about their disability and who are angry about some of the ableist things they've experienced. And I fully understand why, and I understand it. Like I'm right there with them, and that's their experience, and they're allowed to be angry, and that's fine. For me, though, I look at that and I go, if I scream at this person, they're never gonna pay attention to me. If I call them an ableist and that's all I call them, they're never gonna listen to me. I need to come at it from a place of understanding.
Yeah.
And I don't need to. I can tell them to f off and move on.
You want
but
to.
I have
That's what you've decided for yourself. Like,
yeah.
There's a place and a time to get angry, I think, and that's for you to decide or for whoever to decide. But there's, it does a lot more benefit to come at it with a little bit of grace and a little bit of benefit of the doubt, as long as that person has shown some interest in having a open and constructive conversation about what it is that we're talking about. And that's what I think I appreciate about you is you're willing to call a spade and say, hey, like this thing, or frame it in humor and say, like, haha, I love when a white guy who's heterosexual and American and fully able tries to talk about this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, oh, it kind of puts me in my place to say, oh yeah, I could see how that could be mistook, but it's done as a friendly, banter that is received well and
hopefully he's learned from.
yeah. And then and I know it's coming from a place of, hey, how the hell else am I supposed to know? I can't know everything there is to know about your world unless I talk to people or am around people who are in your world, just like anything else.
And I mean, I also think like I am also equally guilty of fucking up and putting my foot in it and saying the wrong thing. And so like this idea that I would expect grace if I fucked up, so why shouldn't you also expect the same grace? Right. And it isn't easy there, and because of the world we live in with social media and all that bullshit now, like it's really fun to get online and be like, no, so and so said no. Because you get a really quick reaction when you do that. But that's, for me, I think, and I am totally guilty of doing that. I'm totally guilty of putting an experience online and being like, this person's a fucking asshole, no. And, people will say all of the echo chambery things, but then it's a problem because that person might read that later and be like, wow, I was just trying to learn. Right. I was just trying to understand.
Yeah. Let's change the tone just a little bit here. What brings Andrew Gurza joy? How do you stretch your creativity, your hobbies, your passions? Talk to me a little bit about that part of your life.
Yeah, what brings me joy? What brings me joy? That's I just wrote a book about it. And you think I'd have it ready to go?
Read the book.
Great.
Yeah.
I like that. But also, like, I liked the older I get, I just turned 40.
Me too.
So the older I get, just like simple stuff, like a good TV show, a good book, like naps at 2:30 sometimes, like, you know,
That's
just
best. That is the
like
best.
simple stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, and stuff like this, like bringing these conversations to people that wouldn't otherwise have them, that brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Being able to put my experiences in a book and know that somebody's gonna read it and be like, wow, I experienced that too. I feel connected to this person now, or I've never experienced that, but I learned something like that. Knowing that my story and my privilege has allowed me to bring this stuff to the forefront, that brings me joy. Like all the hard work where I was writing for nothing and I was telling these stories for $0 and nobody knew who I was, and I was putting in the time to know that it's come back to this, that stuff brings me joy. And then when we're talking about like non-work related stuff, like I love horror movies, I love just hanging out and just being.
Yeah. So a lot of your work obviously is advocacy work and education of some sort. Even on this podcast here, you're being an advocate, right? That's part of why we brought you here and why you accept these sort of things. And you just mentioned that you do get some empowerment and some joy from doing that. But I would also imagine that you're being asked the same questions probably a lot. You're being asked to constantly explain things. You're kind of in maybe a little bit on a pedestal of that's who we should ask to educate me, right? And to justify yourself and your experiences and to bring those things, up and to tell people when they're being an asshole and to, those sort of things. What kind of emotional toll does that take? If I would say if any, but I got to imagine it does. And kind of is that something I'm just going to deal with that, or is that harder some days than others, or kind of speak to that?
It's harder some days, and there are days where I don't want to do it, and like I'm very privileged in that I created my job, so there are days where I don't have to do it. There are days where I can turn off the advocacy and just like be brain dead and watch a movie and just not focus on that. But also I'm a freelancer, so I'm constantly looking for my next gig to put food on the table and to pay for sex work and to pay for all the things that I enjoy doing and traveling and all that stuff. So I think that I love when they hire me. I love when I'm hired, because then I can say like, oh, I can make money this month. I can do like, this is good. This is a good thing. And my rates are pretty. They're not high, but they're not low either. They're people have said they're too low. People have said raise them, but I'm always like, I want to build a relationship with the people that hire me, and I also live on benefits, so I'll always be okay. I want to do it to find the joy in it, not necessarily always for the money.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's gonna keep a level of, for lack of a better term, purity to what you're doing. And I guess to say like keeping your message and your passion for the advocacy work that you do, if it's not if it's not all about making sure that I can eat tomorrow, then I think that opens up another level of creativity and some freedom to pursue that in a way that you might have a harder time doing if that was going to be, if it's this or starve to death. So I don't know. That's just my thought anyway.
Yeah, you're right. I like to be creative, but I also I'm constantly reminding people like this is a job. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked to work for free. I was asked a couple years ago to fly to a big convention in New York, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to go there. I'm like, here are my rates, and they were like, oh yeah, we don't pay our speakers, and I was like, oh, then I'm not coming. The answer is
right.
No, like
you got to pay to get me there. You got to pay to where I sleep. You got to pay for whatever help I need. You got to pay for the food that I eat, and you got to pay me for the work that I'm doing.
and they didn't want to do any of that. And I was like, well, then I'm not coming. And like, even, throughout the pandemic, I would have to say like, I'll do this Zoom with you,
Right.
but I'm going to charge you my rate because. And so like, I am so ready to give back to the community that I serve, but also constantly reminded that this is my job. It's a job you're doing.
What are you dealing with? Not necessarily, obviously, physically. We've talked about that. If you're willing to share, what's going on right now, mentally, emotionally, maybe spiritually? How's that in the world of Andrew Gurza right now?
Right now, today, right now.
Sure.
Well, weird sidebar. I just read that Carrie Underwood is going to sing for Trump, and my heart kind of broke because I was like, "Wow, the gays loved you 20 years ago. What are you doing?
Oh, no.
Like, I guess you're cheating on America now, Carrie." It was just kind of like shocking, and also like the Village People, aren't they gay icons?
Right.
Why are they
I thought
agreeing to? Like, why are they now saying that like the YMCA is not a gay anthem and they're gonna sing it for Trump? What? Weird. So like in this very moment right now, I'm like, what the fuck is happening to America?
Right.
Like, I'm flying to Washington in a few weeks for a big thing I have to do, and I'm flying around the time he gets inaugurated. And part of me is like, oh God, like what? It's gonna be
This
a
might
shit show
be a
over there.
mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How the fuck are we in 2025? We're in the 6th year of an ongoing pandemic that we all like to pretend is over, but it's not.
Right.
We re-elected a president who, and I'm in Canada, and I'm watching this thing like, what the? But I was born in the States, so I feel like my people. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, what are we doing here? How are we still doing this? And so, but I'm also looking at the new year, and I'm excited to bring my book out in the world, and I'm excited to see where that takes me. And so like, I'm really excited to get bigger names. Like I hope that some celebrities read my book and are like, wow, that's really cool. We should like do something with that. And so like that's cool, and I'm excited to see where that goes. And so, but when I think about and winter, we're recording this in January, and so winter is like a fucked up time. I hate winter.
Same.
Yeah,
me too.
I really hate it.
Just makes every emotion seem a little bit stronger. It makes
Yeah.
every day seems so
It's just so
damn
much difficult, more difficult.
Yeah, the sunlight is gone for a lot longer, and but the day seems twice as long.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
it's just-
exactly.
it sucks. I'm with you on that for sure.
It's the worst.
Draining.
So, of all the things that you've got going on right now, maybe through your podcast or through working on your book or through some of the whatever the work that you've been done, can you tell me or us a little bit about some of the more rewarding like connections that you've made along the way? Some of the things that you, I would say interpersonal connections, and kind of tell us the story of maybe one or some of those.
Yeah, just people saying like, when I released the book cover yesterday, people were like, wow, I'm so excited to read this. Like, it's so important to see, and to have people email me. They've emailed me over the years and said like, you know what, your show is a bright spot for me. It's really important for me. Like, it makes me feel not so alone, and to get little snippets of that. And I make all this stuff just like you guys do in my bedroom, in my house.
Yep.
Like, there is no team behind me. There's me and myself and me and doing it. So to know that it has an impact like that, like that's will never not be the most rewarding part of this whole thing.
Anything in particular, any specific like shout outs, I guess, that you want to give to like maybe like, is there a connection that you've made with a person or a group of people or anything like that? And it's okay if you don't have it, but that came about through this. And why is it me and our podcast?
I mean, of course it's you and your podcast. No, but I mean, I love working with indie podcasters like yourself and just having a chat. And I think, we think that the work we do has to be so big and so like has to have all these followers and has to have all this money behind it and it has to have all this clout. And like, I remember a couple years ago, I emailed a try guy and said, "Do you want to come on the show?" And I just cold emailed him and said, "Hey, love what you guys are doing, and I heard you talk about disability. Would you want to come on my show?" And I thought he's gonna be a Hollywood star and tell me no and tell me to go away. And he wrote back within 20 minutes and said, "Sure, no problem." And like we started chatting, and then he invited me on to film a Try Guys podcast and to do like
Wow.
So cool.
that kind of stuff. And like that, it all came from me just saying like, "Hey, do you want to talk to me about this?"
Yeah.
And so like I encourage people who want to do what I do, who are like, "How did you get started?"
Mm-hmm.
I just started. There was
Mhm.
nobody pushed me into it. And so like the only reason I have a book and anything to talk about in that realm is because I dared to talk about stuff the way that I wanted to. And I was like, here it is. And so all of that's an organic thing that I built.
Mm-hmm.
And so I encourage anyone who wants to be creative to just start. Your first, if you go back to my show, Disability After Dark, episode 1, it's bad. It's not good in any stretch of the imagination. But I put it out there and I did it. And so like disabled people ask me all the time how I do what I do. And I just started.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it for over a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't know what I'm doing necessarily. I'm just doing it though. I'm still
Right.
doing it.
Right. You've mentioned to me in the past that you enjoy talking to able-bodied people about disability.
Yeah.
You've even said to me that you like the question, how will you handle disability when it comes to you?
Yeah.
And talk to me about why this is a meaningful conversation for you.
It's a fun question because it makes people without disabilities go, "Oh, that's going to be a part of my experience too."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I never thought about that. And it makes them realize that we're a lot closer than people realize we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When it comes to disability, especially for folks who are born disabled, in my experience, being born disabled, you kind of get treated like an alien that no one ever knows how to manage you because you were born this different way. And how does your body work? Oh my goodness. So when I say, what about when it's your turn? It kind of stops people in their tracks and they go, I never considered that it will be me.
Yeah.
And it scares them a little bit because they realize, oh, this will be me one day. And I don't know how to feel about that. And so I love just gauging their reactions of how that feels when it's going to be their turn.
Have you had any any instances that it didn't turn out like well, like the conversation kind of halted at that point, or not really? Most
Not
people are
really.
yeah.
I'm been lucky enough that like when they have questions, like or when they have concerns, I work through them with it, and sometimes I do it live on the podcast. Like when I had Zach from the Try Guys on my show a couple years ago, like I suggested to him, he was telling me all about his disabilities, and I was like, well, maybe you're disabled, and he was like, oh no, I don't know if that's the term I would use. And then a few months later, on a Try Guys video, he said, it's because of my conversation with Andrew that I think I'm going to use the word disabled. And like that was like, first of all, how fucking cool is that?
Right.
To know that a conversation with little old me prompted somebody to think about their experience enough to change the way they're going to refer to themselves and to realize that disability is okay. And so like you asked me a second ago, like the connection, that was really cool.
Yeah.
That's something that I will hold on to forever because, in this digital age, we all watch YouTube videos from BuzzFeed from 10 years. Like that's what we did. And so to know that I had an impact in his journey a little bit, it meant a lot to me. It was really, really cool to be shouted out and then to be asked multiple times to come back on their show and just sit in and be silly and playful. Like those kind of connections from me just telling my story is really cool.
So this is probably going to sound really dumb, and you feel free to whatever.
Laugh at you.
Yeah, laugh at me. So I spent and I got what I would consider the most minuscule taste of a disability by I had to have surgery on my wrist, right? So for 7-8 weeks, I was not able to use my left hand basically at all. Now,
I feel like there's inappropriate joke in there somewhere that I'm just gonna leave it.
Yeah, if
Come on.
if you think I haven't made that joke when my sister's not around, you're wrong.
Gross.
But
Come on.
yeah, but it's in those moments that I come back to conversations that you and I have had in the past, or I think about those things because I go, this is what he was talking about when he mentioned that. Like, this is just a small piece of what could happen and what will happen at some point in my life, right?
Yeah.
Like I had a heightened sense, even with just my left arm, and in my mind, I know in 8 weeks I'm going to be able to use my left hand again. So mentally, that's a completely different story than what a lot of people are dealing with already, because I know there's an end in sight, right?
I have an important question for you. Is your left hand your wiping hand?
My wiping hand? Is that what we said? No,
Yeah.
no, I'm all right hand for that.
Thank goodness for that. Thank
Right.
goodness.
That's funny. But I noticed that even in that, I have a heightened level of like problem solving and having to adapt to like, how am I just going to carry the groceries in and things like that. And even that shows ableism and privilege and all of that, because I'm going, how am I even going to do this? How am I even going to have, well, there's a lot of people in this world, one who is in the digital room with us, that's not even an option at any point. So not in the ways that we think about it. So, and there was so many frustrations, and I know some of that probably comes from going from not having a lot of a time to adapt, which is there a proper amount of time or whatever? Probably not. I don't know. I'm just thinking, as those are the kind of, those experiences bring me back to how I think important it is for us to keep these conversations in mind, because that's just, a blip on the scale. And I don't try to I'm not trying to, please know that I'm not trying to say that like that I think that there's any level of
comparison.
Right. Yeah. That's not what I'm doing.
No. And I don't take it that way at all.
But just seeing that in that small little bit, how much of an effect it had on my day-to-day life, and understanding that, there's a lot of people that deal with varying levels of just differences, struggles, but also just differences in how life looks.
Just varying and temporary levels of ability.
Right. Yeah.
Ability is a temporary state.
Yep.
Disability is forever.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
What questions do you have for Lauren?
Come on now.
Do I have for Lauren?
No.
Tell me the grossest thing Jeff did in your childhood too.
Oh no.
Oh man.
The grossest thing?
The grossest thing? He didn't do a whole lot of gross things, I don't think. Other than
were you guys raised in like a super like, don't do this or you'll be in trouble forever kind of house? What
did you grow up with us? Because kind of.
I mean, kind of. I think the grossest it got was like placing the feet on each other. That's
nothing too.
Yeah,
that's the grossest.
No, it wasn't. I mean, or flatulation. Other Other than that, like it didn't get much grosser than that, I don't think.
Do you have any burning disability questions, either of you?
Okay, so if you were the Scarlet Witch, let's say, and you could bend reality to your will.
Okay.
What's one thing you would want to change about your world or the world? Or
okay, well, first of all, I would make Captain America be my love slave, number one. Number one.
Yeah, as you should.
Okay. So is Captain America / Chris Evans your MCU choice?
That's a really hard question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. He's a really good Chris. He's better than Pratt. I mean,
oh yeah, of course.
He's 10 million times better than Pratt.
But you have the choice between him and Hemsworth, and you're picking Evans.
Listen, I'm picking both of them. I'm not saying I never said that Hemsworth couldn't be there.
They both wield a big hammer, so
Yeah, it's
Wow.
fine. I also come with that.
you are worthy.
But to answer the question more seriously,
Yeah.
like if I could change something, I'd take away all the stairs for everyone.
The stairs, you said?
Take away all the stairs for everyone.
Yeah.
Why do we need them?
Yeah, you're right.
Why are they valuable? What do they bring to the world that's important?
Yeah.
Take away all the stairs and make
Everyone
everything
can ride
flat.
the elevator or be flat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about elevators? How do you feel about elevators?
They're pretty great.
Yeah.
I wish that there was more of them.
Probably bigger.
I wish, bigger ones. I wish that they would. Some of them don't have keys. I don't understand why you would make an elevator and then put a key on it.
Yeah. What's that about?
I don't understand why that's a thing people do.
Mm-mm.
There should just be more of them, and they should be in every space everywhere. And I think that if I could change the world, I would put elevators everywhere. I mean, if the Coliseum can do it, and for real, the Coliseum has done it.
That's
why
crazy.
isn't this?
Yeah.
Why isn't it everywhere?
Huh.
That's true.
Wow.
Coliseum has a lot of stairs too, I think, though.
Yeah, but at least they decided to be appropriate and put an elevator in.
True. Okay, so a misconception or behavior you wish people would stop doing or saying or believing.
A misconception about me or disability or who?
Maybe answer that however you want.
I wish people would stop thinking that disability will never happen to them. Because as we've said multiple times today, it's going to, and it will, and it is, and it's okay.
Yeah. So when you said about you or about disability, so what's one about you that wish people would stop doing or having?
I wish people would stop thinking that just because I'm a public figure doesn't mean I don't have feelings. Sometimes because I'm so public with what I talk about, people assume that they can say whatever they want, and that's that's not cool. There's still a person attached to there.
Right.
And I think in our culture today, it's really fun to cancel people and yell at people, and that's cool. But there's a person behind this this stuff you're doing, and it's really hard. It can be harmful.
Yeah. What is one thing everyone listening right now could do today to make the world a better place, whether it's about disability or not?
Recognize your privilege, whoever you are, wherever you are. You have privilege, and you can use it for good or for evil. And so, what do you want to use it for? Especially us white folks, it's cool that we're white, but also that sounds really good. That's not what I mean. We are. I mean that our privileges as white people, we should learn when to shut up and not talk and not. We don't need to be a part of the conversation. We can be quiet. And so sometimes I, as a white disabled creator, have to this is not for me to weigh in here. I can sit out.
What's next for Andrew Gurza?
Get
that
world
book published?
domination. Yeah.
Damn.
Well, it's coming out now. I think it's in the throes of being published right now. Hopefully some kind of talking tour, speaking tour.
Very cool. That would be awesome. What do I have to do to get a signed copy of your book?
You buy it and have them send it to me, and then I'll send it to you signed.
Perfect. Deal. All right. Do you have anything else you want to put out there before we sign off? Anything you'd like to promote? I mean, you talked about your book. Will you, once you have a link to where people can buy that, if you send it to me or anything, I'll put it on our show notes.
They can just go on the Amazon. They can just go on the Amazon right now and just,
it's pre-ordered. That's right. You mentioned that. Okay, I will link that in the notes in our show notes. Anything else? What else is going on?
What else is going on? Not much really. Just the freelancer thing. The podcast is still going.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to put together my 378th episode of my show. Like what the hell?
Wow, that's insane.
So that's happening. And the show's still going, but I'm also kind of looking at, do I want to do it anymore? Do I want to try something different? Like, do I want to do different stuff? So like, I'm looking at options.
Yeah, I know that feeling. We've done several things where we go back in I don't know if you listen to our show, but you should. But we have a lot of different things from like storytelling to trivia shows to movie reviews and stuff. But that's just mostly because we get bored and we want to we want to do different stuff. I don't want to do the same thing every time. So
I also get bored, and I understand the feeling of like wanting to just drop it, and like I wish that a big company would call me up and say, can we license your show? Can we like do it for you? Because I, like you guys, I do it all myself, and that shit's exhausting. I would love for a producer to be like, I'll do it for you. Don't even think about it. Don't even worry about it. Let's go.
You make the content. I'll put it out there.
I would die. I'd be like, yes, great, perfect.
Absolutely. So this has been a very, in my opinion, a very fun episode of Headspace by My Mama Done Told Me. If you want to connect to our family, you can give us your opinions. You can, send us what you think about our conversation with Andrew Gurza today or any other conversations we had, or ask us questions. If you have a question for Andrew, you can contact him. I will have all of his information as well as ours in the show notes.
Show notes.
Thank you. Go check out Andrew's podcast, Disability After Dark. Find it wherever you find your podcasts. So wherever you're listening to this, after this ends, and after you listen to what's after our post credits, then go into the search bar and Disability After Dark, and then you'll see a little photo of Andrew.
Not anymore. It's actually just a black bar with the title.
No, it's not. Yes. I was just like there like last week.
I switched it up. I don't think it's my smiling face anymore. I think I think I was going through a moody period where I was like, let's just try.
A black.
You know what's happening? Yeah. I was like, oh, I know how Canva works now. Let me try all these cool different things. That's what happened.
Yep. Fair enough. Okay, so find all that. If you want to email us, our email address is
mymamadonetoldmepodcast@gmail.com.
Yep, and everything will be in our show notes. Show notes. And let's see, Andrew, you are the best. I really appreciate what you're doing. And I like when we're on each other's podcasts because I always have a good time, a good conversation. And I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad that book is coming out, man.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Me too. Hopefully I'll make some bank from, not really. But hopefully, it'll go wide and far. And I really hope that it will touch the right people and maybe make the change I'm asking for in the book.
Do you know how, is it going to be in like bookstores?
Yep.
Which ones do you know?
I think Barnes and Noble. I think they're gonna a lot of the big U.S. Kohl's, I think, is the thing they're gonna do.
Do you know like how stoked I'm gonna be to walk into a store and see your book? Like that's gonna make me so happy.
Sending it to you.
I'm already like looking at the cover is still like that's the book with my name on it. But I wrote this. And now I can say, because before when I was doing talks, I would say, oh, I'm a internet person or I'm a disability awareness consultant. Now I can say author, and I can look, that's for real. Cool. I've done it. So like it's still like, wow, I did this. And so like it'll be nice when I go into my bookstores in Canada and see my book.
And when you get to the point where you're doing your talking tour for the book or any of your engagements, you get to send them some books, and then you can do a signing and you can sell books, and you're even making more money. So
and like and maybe there are some people in Nebraska who need me to fly out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As soon as this podcast makes me any money, then we'll talk about that too.
I mean, right?
Yeah. But anyway, again, thank you. I'm glad you're doing well. And to our listeners, we hope you keep your minds open and be kind to each other. Until next time, I'm Jeff. That's Lauren. And we're here with Andrew Gurza. And we wish him well for the evening and for life and forever. And
Wow.
and all
That's
the
a lot
things
of-
that, yeah.
Dang.
I know. I'm just going to keep talking until Lauren tells me to shut up.
Wow.
That was quick. Doesn't take much.
No, you just got to shush me. What's your horror most recent one?
You're gonna laugh at me.
No.
Remember Arthur?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I found all of
That.
That.
It's just weird because he's dead, so like I didn't like it.
You didn't? I loved it.
I don't understand why we need to watch him fuck her and then die. What? Why?
Yeah. That's what the men that were doing that, whatever he was supposed to be, like counts or whatever, was.
Do you eat mayonnaise, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm so sorry that I said that. And so it's weirdly comforting
Yeah, he has a really weird mustache and a giant schlong on the television, like 70-foot screen.
because I like those kid shows because did we see his schlong?
You didn't see it?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Time to rewatch
Well,
it.
you gotta rewatch it now. You hated it.
Ew,
I don't
no.
know.
So gross.
Oh no.
You know, if Andrew Gurza is saying that, then it must not
It
be
was a
good
little
too.
weird.
And I also I don't understand why he has a mustache. Can
Well-
someone explain?
Have you ever had like a butter knife or something that had mayonnaise on it? You leave it out and it turns translucent.
Mhm. I
It's
don't know.
so
It's
gross.
It's not gonna look as impressive on a television screen.
Only if it's in the sandwich. I don't need it. I wouldn't just be like.
I hope you wouldn't. I hope
would.
nobody.
Yeah, ew.
No,
No? Not in your house.
not in my house. No,
It's weirdly comforting television.
no, I understand that
Yeah,
for sure.
For sure.
Anyway,
It's
I need
fine.
to eat something.
Yeah, me too. I'm starving.
Get some whipped cream.
Some whipped cream and some cool whip.
What?
Creme.
Cool whip.
Some whipped creme.
Some cool whip.
Let's do it.
Why?
Miracle
Stewie.
whip.
Miracle whip.
What?
I hate Miracle Whip.
Let me wet my whistle.
Wet your whistle.
Ew. What?
I think that was because what was he, like some kind of
haven't seen it.
conquistador or something?
Did you say conquistador?
Yeah, but that's not what I meant.
Conquistador. Good.
I saw the actor got the prosthetic
Mhm.
schlong
Yeah.
framed
Yeah.
and gave it to one of his co-actors.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, that's right. I did
Yeah.
see that. I did see that.
Vlad the Impaler had and a
Hmm.
giant schlong on the television. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.